Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about Underworld, the 2003 movie. I love this movie so much. It's one of the first movies I ever bought on DVD. The first one was actually Resident Evil. But this came out in 2003. It was my third year of college, and I was really getting into like the action horror genre. There was Blade, there was Resident Evil, and then this movie came out. And I remember all it took was the trailers for me to get into this movie. When the trailers start, similar to that of the movie, we see a woman dressed all in black leather, perched on like a rooftop balcony, and like she's just narrating, and then she drops down to the ground, which is over a couple of 100 feet. About like, I don't know, about like 100 feet or so. And it was just like the most amazing thing I ever saw. And then I saw the rest of the trailer and I was hooked. But then it's kind of like, back then, like I said before, I don't really go to the movies. So on a whim, I bought it on DVD without watching it in the theaters first. And I was ecstatic. I loved what I saw. This movie is beautiful. Like the location in Hungary, the gothic nature of it, the blue filter, which after a while, the blue filter does get kind of annoying. But back then I was all for it because it was so new back then. People really didn't use that blue filter for like horror or nighttime and stuff like that. So it was like a breath of fresh air. And when watching this movie, I realized something. It has a very Romeo and Juliet like quality to it, which was the intent all along. This movie introduced me to like, Kate Beckinsale and the rest of the stars. And I remember a friend of mine really enjoyed this movie as well. Like, during the time of like the making of this movie, Hollywood, was into horror action. They was into like trench coats, leather. They was into like, gunslinging, like hand-to-hand combat, and especially that of vampires around this time, or some type of post-apocalyptic like monster and everything. It was a good time for these movies. And Kate Beckinsale is an amazing like actress and action star. It just sucks that her career afterwards hasn't really thrived. Like it hasn't really achieved the accomplishments of like I say like this franchise and stuff. Because she's done other stuff and other action stuff. But, Van Helsing didn't do so well. Total Recall didn't do so well. That Amazon Prime television show she had didn't do so well. And so, like, I think she's on the show now. So, so that's a good thing. I also heard she's a little difficult to work with. Like, because, like, there's drama in this movie. And there's drama throughout the entire franchise. And it always points to her, which really sucks because when you look at her on Instagram, she's just a person who's living it up, having fun, taking pictures with her dog, being silly. And for some bizarre reason, she dated Pete Davidson, which I still don't understand why anybody would date him. And how he gets all these fine women, I don't understand. But this movie sadly did not do well in terms of like viewership and stuff, ratings or whatever. It had only 31% on like Rotten Tomatoes at that time. It had mixed, I had to clear my throat, mixed to like negative reviews. Because when you watch this movie, the story is actually pretty bland. It does have that Romeo and Juliet aesthetic to it, but it's very watered down. Like you don't get enough of that Romeo and Juliet. It's only like tidbits and stuff. And not only that, but then there you find out there's a war going on between the vampires and the werewolves, and you see them interact with each other, but not really in an antagonistic war-like fashion. You get told that, but you really don't get to see it. You kind of don't really get to see it really until like the third movie, because this movie is a huge franchise. But nevertheless, even though the story was a little bland, it kept me entertained. The visuals, the acting, the action, and the little tidbits we got of like the mythology of here. This isn't your typical werewolf vampire type thing. What really intrigued me is that this wasn't really so much supernatural magic type stuff that turns people into vampires and werewolves. It's more has to do with that of a virus, which was really interesting. They went the scientific route. A lot of horror movies around this time started to go the scientific route, and in fact, they're still doing it today. The supernatural thing is just kind of, it can be there, but it's more rooted in science and viruses now, which is really interesting. And so, because what happened was, there's this man named something Corvinus, and he was like this like warlord type dude, and he got contracted a virus. A plague went through, and so he had two sons. Somehow the virus molded with his genome and made him like the first immortal. Then he had two sons. The virus passed on to the sons along with the immortal gene. One son got bit by a bat and the other one by a wolf. Now, that's all really we know. We don't know much of the significance of Marcus and William. We'll find out more about them in the second movie. And so, like, because of them, they started biting other people, creating vampires and werewolves. The werewolves in this are called lichen, which I like that name. Lichen campanopi. The term has always been around, but people don't never really call werewolves lichens. They just call them werewolves and stuff. So it's nice to hear the word lichen and stuff, and it gives it a new like feel to it, like a its own little style. You know what I'm saying? And another little style this movie has is the vampires. Then they're called like death dealers. Like that's just a cool name in itself and stuff, you know. And it's really interesting to see where this franchise went, because it hasn't always went in the best direction and stuff. Like there are a total of like 6 movies, 5 live action, and 1 short film anime. And only really the first 2 I really like enjoy. Like I think they're awesome. The third one is really good, but there's just something lacking in the third. It didn't. It does tell more of the war between them and the love story of like this one plot in the movie from the first one, but things are kind of reshot differently. I'll explain a little bit more, especially when I get into that movie. Then you got the fourth movie. The fourth movie is when it really started to have cracks in like its infrastructure. The fourth movie is not very good. It's just an action movie, and the action is the only good part. But, you know, there's a person missing from that movie, there's another person added to the movie, there's a bunch of new characters, and it's just not very good in terms of storytelling. And it made these good guys now the bad guys. And that kind of sucks. And it's just good for the action and only the action. Then you get the fifth movie, Blood Wars, which I don't remember anything about that movie. I just remember there being lots of snow. And instead of black leather, now they're wearing white, like winter coats. And then that pretty much just killed the franchise. And then they did like that animated short, which I personally just don't like. And so, like, the actress, you know, Kate Beckinsale at some point said, you know, she was done with the franchise, she's moving on. But when she moved on to other stuff, it didn't work out so well. So now, of course, she's saying, like, hey, she'll be open to return. And there were talks of making a television show out of this. That could have worked if they would have actually done it, but they did not. And if they do it now, they probably should just recast, or better yet, make it a prequel. We want to see the war, but the problem is a lot of the stars have now aged out of their roles. And like, vampire is supposed to be immortal and not age. Also, because like the head vampire dude, Victor, who everybody wants to see, he is much, much, much older now than what he used to be. This came out 20 years ago. And he was older back then and can barely do the fights. And I just don't want to see him struggle and be in pain, you know? So it'd probably be best if they just recast. And this movie was actually supposed to cross over with other movies. This movie was supposed to cross over with I, Frankenstein. Then it was supposed to cross over with the Blade series. And then, but Marvel had later regained the rights, and that's when they put Blade in the MCU. So that fell apart. Then it was supposed to cross over with Resident Evil. I can see them crossing over with Blade, but Resident Evil and like I, Frankenstein, like, I don't know, that's a bit of a stretch. Like a real huge stretch. You know, it just is. But you know, despite the reviews, this movie made like a lot of stinking money, so of course, you know, a sequel came. But every sequel got mixed reviews and stuff. And I don't understand why. Like, these movies are beautiful. These movies are breathtaking. These movies are awesome. The only problem with these movies is that we keep hearing about the war between the vampires and the werewolves. But we never really saw it from back in those times, except for small tidbits in the second movie. And then we kind of see it in the third, but the third is more, again, of that Romeo and Juliet thing. And even though they are like ain'ts between the two species, we really don't get to see the full-fledged war that broke out. And that's the problem with these movies. The fourth movie, see, after the second movie should have just ended everything in the present day. That's it. End everything in the present day. Then the third movie made the smart decision to go back in time. Then after that, what they should have did with the fourth and fifth was continue with those prequel of movies showing the war and everything like that. But no, they decided to go forward with the present day because the director, later producer of these movies, he later married that of the lead actress. And like I said before, there is drama with all that, which I will get to very briefly at the end of this video. All the drama that happened in this whole franchise. Lord Jesus have mercy, because there is drama. So let's start off with how all this came to be. I can't pronounce this dude's last name, but Kevin Genovox. He is the one who actually came up with the concept and the idea of making a Romeo and Juliet goth-inspired vampire versus werewolves movie. People seem to think it's the director who came up with the idea, but it's not. It's actually him. See, he was studying microbiology in Howard University. He dropped out of grad school, he moved to LA, and he wanted to work in Hollywood. So he came up with this concept of Romeo and Juliet, vampires and werewolves. And so then that's when they hired Lynn Wiseman to, like, you know, pin out the rest of the story and direct and, like, you know, stuff like that, because he's really interested in werewolves and stuff. And so the writer, Kevin, he actually got to have a small role in the first movie and stuff. He also appeared in the third movie, and I believe he also wrote a tie-in comic book and stuff. And so he is the one responsible for all of this. And many people actually don't even know and stuff. But then, Lynn Wiseman, he is the one who first directed, these movies and stuff. And then he later, produced them. He didn't direct the third. He let somebody else do it. The person who, I believe the director of the third one did like the makeup and special effects for like the first two movies and stuff. And he made a pretty good movie. It's just the story. There's a problem I have with one aspect of the story. Well, actually, two aspects of the story. Actually, three. There are three aspects of the story I got a problem with in the third movie. But other than that, it's like fine and stuff. And so, Lynn will later go on to, produce, the rest of the movies and stuff. And he's still trying to get, some type of revival or a television show. But so far, the studios aren't budging. So we see a woman perched on, a balcony. And she's narrating. And I just love this scene so much of how she's perched on there, kind of like Spider-Man. But her trench coat is flapping in the wind like Batman's cape. And she's narrating about how, the war between the werewolves and the vampires, and how the vampires have nearly caused the werewolves to be extinct. Like they're almost gone. And she's gonna pity when that day comes because she lives for killing for them, because she's all about revenge. And this is Kate Beckinsale's character, Celine. Celine dresses in full leather cat suit. It looks almost like leather rubber almost. So it's like a full body black leather rubber type cat suit with a black leather corset and black boots and a long trench coat made of leather, and it just looks amazing. There are designs and the corset. And she's packing these explosives, these throwing star type things, and two guns. And so basically, her and the other vampires, they're death dealers. What they do is that they stalk the streets looking for werewolves and they kill them. And so they see a group of werewolves. And so they're hunting them down, but the werewolves are hunting down a man. So after all the shooting and the commotion, people getting shot and everything, see, the thing is, they want to be in the shadows. They don't want the humans to know who they are. And because then they will start getting exterminated themselves. In this movie, vampires can only die if they're blown up, ripped to shreds, bit by a werewolf, or sunlight. Werewolves, on the other hand, have to be either blown up, dismembered, or bit by a vampire, or silver bullets, or silver anything. They're very allergic to silver. And so every night, this is what the death dealers, they do. And so she realizes that, the werewolves are hunting down this man, but why? They lead her down into the underground sewers where she hears tons of werewolves, just a commotion and stuff. So basically, when she goes back to her headquarters and tell people this, they don't believe her because, she thinks that Lucian, one of the most powerful werewolves there is leading the pack, but her superiors telling her no because he killed him. So when it comes to the vampires, they live in luxury. They're very slim, they have nice cheekbones, they're pale, they dress all in black for the most part, in leather and lace. They live in mansion, and their mansion is gorgeous and stuff. They live that high society lifestyle. Werewolves, on the other hand, do not. They live in packs. They mostly live underground. They dress in these big, huge, wool type coats and everything, mostly browns. They wear a lot of brown color, grays, blacks, dingy looking clothes. They are lower class citizens. And so, like, because they are literally to the point of extinction, and they've been that way for many, many centuries. And, it takes a good while to find out what led to all this. And so, Celine is on a vendetta. She just wants to kill as many werewolves as possible because we get some tragic backstory with her. Basically, when she was just a little girl, she was human and she lived with her family. And then all of a sudden, she was told that werewolves came in the middle of the night and murdered her entire family, only leaving her alive. It is then she was filled with rage, and the head vampire, one of the strongest and oldest of all vampires, is that of Victor. And he turned her into a vampire, and she resembles that of his daughter that he once had. And so since then, she's been on a vendetta. And, when it comes to her, she is the one who has that Romeo Juliet love story with that of Michael Corvin, a American living in Hungary as a grad student, a medical student. And so, like, when she sees him, she gives him kind of like a look, but not so much a loving look, just like a stare, like she's like examining him and stuff. Basically, this leads to problems because she wants to know straight up why the werewolves are after him. So she she finds out who he is, sneaks into his place, and then the werewolves come a showing. And so she has to like fight, like, to get him out of there, but they are in a car accident to the point where he saves her life by giving her CPR. And so this causes her to, like, be more intrigued by him, which is causing problems with her superior, Craven. The love aspect between these two isn't really all that apparent. It's mostly just like a look and stuff like that. But like I said before, it causes so much problems between her and her coven. Craven, the character of Celine, is like very cold, very icy, very still and stealthy. Like, she doesn't really show too much emotion. She's just almost like methodical in a cold kind of way. And it's really cool because it's kind of like she is the hero of the movie, but it's like she's bent on like revenge in this very still like nature. It's played by Shane Broly, and he is obsessed with her. Like, he is madly in love with Celine, but she don't want to have anything to do with him. Now, there's a woman named Erica who's just like, a vampire lady who pretty much goes to bed with him all the time, and she loves him, but he don't love her because he loves Celine. He is in charge of the mansion while his boss and one of the head of the vampires is asleep. See, the thing about the vampires in this mythology is that there are three main vampires who are in charge: Victor, Marcus, and Amelia. But there's a fraction between the vampires. They can't all agree on stuff. So Amelia took her group of vampires and they live in like another country. So there are two like main houses and stuff, but there are three covens. And so they decided that it would be beneficial for the heads of the vampires to sleep through the centuries while only one person reigned. So they leapfrog in time every 1,000 years and stuff. So Amelia is her reign now, but we don't get to see much of Amelia. We see a bit more of her in the second movie, but it's still small. Amelia basically makes a cameo in this, a non-speaking one, and then she later dies. And she dies from the hands of the werewolves. I wish we could have got more of Amelia. It would have been nice if she would have had her own movie and we get to see how she reigns and everything, because we never truly got like no real good impression by her in this first movie other than she's just hot and that's it. But we see she is tough in the second movie, And we learn a little bit more about her in the fourth. But other than that, she never got her like dues, so that was a real disappointment. And like I said, these movies, they are not perfect. I wish they would explain things slightly more instead of being so vague. But she is one of like the elders and stuff, and it's during her reign. She is supposed to awaken Marcus, who is the son of Corvinus, and the one who was bit by a bat when he was younger, creating the rest of the vampires. Craven is very like, he is power hungry and everything. He wants to be in charge. And it's later revealed that he's planning a coup with the werewolves and everything. And like basically he back in the day was kind of like the fixer, the cleanup guy. He cleaned up all the messes and kept all the secrets. This will later be somewhat retconned into like a different character when we get into that of the second and especially the third movie. And so like when it comes to that of Craven, like I said before, he just lusts after that of Celine, but Celine will not have him. And he doesn't like the idea of like Celine running after this human, Michael Corvin. And so basically his whole thing is he wants to destroy all the covens and later on kill Marcus while Marcus is asleep. When the vampires sleep, they're underground in these tombs and their bodies are rotted away. And so they have to be revived later on and stuff. Now, before I forget about this, like the dude who plays Craven, I'll spoil this for the second movie. He dies very early on in the second movie. I mean, within the first couple of minutes, and he is gone for the rest of the franchise. I was very shocked and surprised he did not return for the third movie because it was set back in the old days and he should have been around during that time. So instead, they had to create another character for the second movie that also kept all the secrets and, hid information and stuff like that. And then that character appeared in the third movie. Why that actor who played Craven didn't return? Because, he could have returned in the third because it was set back in the old days. Nobody knows why. Erica is basically just like a vixen. She wants to be like, the queen to that of Craven. And basically, I think what it was is that like she had to work her way up to get where she is next to his side. She was basically just kind of like a harlot type character. And so she hates Celine because Celine has the affection of that of Craven. And so there's an interesting story as to why this character never reappeared in the movie franchise. And I mean, she never appeared. She never even dies and everything. But she does run her mouth off the character when Celine is doing things she shouldn't, like the human that Celine is after, and later when the human gets bit, and then she helps Celine escape. So Michael Corvin, he is a direct descendant of the Corvinus strand, and he's just a typical human living in Hungary and a medical student. He's played by Scott Speedman. The first time I saw him was in Goosebumps alongside Ryan Gosling. He played the cop to Say Cheese and Die. And so he is the one just thrown in the mix of all this, and he knows nothing about vampires and werewolves until they show up to his apartment. And so, like, when Celine has to rescue him and they get in that car accident, he is bitten by one of the vampires, Lucian. So Celine now knows for a fact the dude is alive and Craven has been lying this entire time. And when he bites him, it's like every time a vampire bites somebody, their eyes glow blue. I love that effect. And so he needed his blood for a reason. And I love the chase sequence. He's literally like Lucian is running on foot whilst the car is speeding away. The way they did this was a treadmill. They attached it to the back of the car, and he's just running on a treadmill as the camera's going by really fast, giving the impression he has super speed. I like this super speed effect because it's very practical, very realistic. But then in the next movies, they go the whole super speed route where it's like a blur. And then that kind of just takes away from it. Because it's kind of like if you can move that fast, then why the heck was everybody dying in the first? The werewolves in this movie, they appear to be the villains, but then it's later found out that they are the innocent ones. They've always been innocent. They was born into slavery, or they was later bit and forced into slavery. And it's actually the vampires' war. That the vampires just hate werewolves because of their appearance. They look at them as dogs. Now, the Lycan werewolves in this, they look awesome. They're really tall. They have black fur. And they have a cat-like appearance in their face because the director didn't want to go the dog route. But he went the dog route in the second one for like William. And one interesting thing about their costume is that all the fur hair strings are individually attached to the costume. Boy, I would hate working on that set. And they walk on stilts to give them that dog-like appearance and everything, which is really interesting. Sadly, however, the suits, they could barely move in them. So the werewolves never really have much momentum unless they're CGI'd and stuff when they're running. And so the werewolves just want to live in peace and, stay out the hair of the vampires because they're hunting them down. So the werewolves realize that, look, man, we ain't got that many in our species no more, and we need to survive. So what they do is that they need to level up. And they remember back in the day, there was gonna be a hybrid of a vampire werewolf, but then that was later killed while the baby was still in the womb because the vampires would not allow that to happen. And they realized this hybrid could be strong enough to defeat the vampires in that of Victor. Victor is the most it is stated he's the most powerful and one of the oldest vampires there is. Now there's a huge twist that comes in the second movie. In the first movie, and I'll get into that one whenever I probably get into the second movie. But in the first movie, it is led to believe that he is born a vampire. He is the oldest. He is the most powerful. And he is the most bloodthirsty and stuff. And so, he really, really, really hates werewolves, and he will kill them on sight. So, when Celine realizes that Craven's been lying and Lucian is alive, she breaks into the archives and she reads the book about the war. And there is a piece of flesh, Lucian's flesh, from his arm, the branding of the slave with Victor's V on there. So basically, it's revealed later on that Craven actually, Lucian probably just cut the flesh off, gave it to that of Lucian. No, Lucian gave the flesh to that of I can't get these names right. Craven. Lucian gave his flesh to that of Craven so that he can give the Victor, proving that he is dead. Because the war broke out in this one home and all the vampires died except for that of Craven. So Celine has been very curious about that ever since. How in the world did he survive and none of the other vampires survived many centuries ago? And that's because he's been working with Lucian this entire time for many centuries. And so, Craven, when all this stuff gets revealed to Celine, he tells her that, you can follow Victor all you want, but he's the reason why your family is alive. See, vampires will not drink human blood in this movie series. What they do is they drink livestock, animals. But Victor broke his own rule and he loves human blood. So he crept through Celine's home and murdered her entire family. Then when he got to her, he couldn't bleed her because she looked so much like Sonia, his daughter, a daughter he condemned to death and everything. And so she doesn't want to believe this, but Craven telling her, it's the truth. He's the one who had to clean all this crap up and keep all the secret and the lies and everything. And that this war is Victor's war. And it started when he killed his daughter, his own daughter, because she fell in love with Lucian, a werewolf. And so, like, this is the explanation we've given it in the first movie, but it gets further elaborated in the second. Basically, the second movie is like a huge exposition and everything of both visuals and dialogue. Everything you knew about the first movie gets completely retconned in the second to add more layers to this story. And I don't know how I feel about that. In one way, I like it because we get to learn more, but the second time, it dilutes what we know about the first movie. I like the idea of him being bloodthirsty and going after humans and slaughtering her family. You know what I'm saying? Because he made her vengeful for no apparent reason. So the werewolves have been collecting blood samples of people of the Covian strain. And that's where Rawls and his team, no, Ray's and his team, are collecting. Ray's is the guy who created this whole concept of Romeo Juliet vampires. He's Kevin. And so we learn more about him in the third movie, but not much. And so he's the one who's been tracking down Michael and everything, because Michael is the last remaining Corvinus in the bloodline and everything. So they're hoping his blood will work. Basically, it's like this. They want to make a hybrid, a vampire slash werewolf, but they need a sample of the original virus strain from the Corvinus bloodline, the first immortal. And Corvinus is nowhere to be found. They believe he is dead somehow, which is weird because he's immortal. Now, they can't get it from vampires and werewolves because they've already been infected and they need a pure source. This is why they're after Michael and stuff. This is why Lucian bit him to turn him into a werewolf and get a blood sample. All they need now is a vampire blood sample from mostly an elder. They want an elder more than anybody else because an elder is very powerful. Elders are interesting because they have the ability to put all their thoughts and memories into, they put all their memories into a single thought. So that lies in their blood. So if they bite you, you get what's called genetic memories. Both werewolves and vampires can do this. And it's one of the highlights of this franchise that makes it so different from others, genetic memories. So when Lucian bit that of Michael, he started getting memories of a woman screaming and Lucian chained into the ground and everything. Apparently, this is what happened back in the day. Lucian fell in love with a vampire, Sonia, who was the daughter of Victor. And because of that, it was a huge no-no. So she was condemned to death by that of Victor. And we get this whole genetic flashback scene of a blonde woman tied to a pole and the sunlight's coming down and her body's burning to a cinder and ash and everything. While we see Lucian chained to the ground, screaming and hollering. We see Victor there, and we see some of his guards, and we see a bunch of prisoners in the background. So when the full moon happened, Lucian turned into a lichen and he killed some of the people in the room and he took the necklace around Sonia's neck and he escaped. See, back in those days, lichens could only turn into werewolves during that of a full moon. But the older, more powerful ones can turn at any time they want. And so this is slightly retcon when you get to the third movie. See, they needed an actress to play Sonia, so they just found some person, I think on the street or something like that. She had the wrong hair color and she didn't look good with a dark brown wig. And she refused to dye her hair, so they kept it blonde. When you get to the third movie, this is somewhat shifted and changed. Now they hired an actual actress to play Sonya who looks similar to Kate Beckinsale. The problem is now there's two different Sonyas in the movie verse. So, I wish they would have changed the footage in the first movie, but they never did. Also, what's different is Victor. He's wearing a completely different outfit from that of the flashback and that of the third movie. Also, what's different is that all the slave prisoners are no longer in the background in the third movie. Also, what's different is that Sonya dies in the room by herself with just Lucian in there, and everybody else is no longer there. This is completely different from that of like the first movie genetic flashback. I don't know why the director didn't just do a scene by scene with new actors and everything. So now it's this disjointed continuity we have from the first and the third movie. Now some could believe that like because Michael is a newly formed werewolf who hasn't fully transformed because he was given a serum to regress his changes, maybe he didn't get the full memories and he believing what he's seeing is not actually real. That's the logic we have to use, but they should have just used the third movie clips and added it to the new DVDs at the first. That's what they should have did, or they should have just filmed comparison side by side with all the appropriateness stuff and not change things around for the new director's vision, because it makes it so disconnected and stuff. So after Victor knows the truth, he sends all his troops to that of where the werewolves are hiding out. Amelia is now dead because the werewolves killed her, and the vampires, the ones that work for Craven, let that happen. And so Craven is just like a weenie who just wants to hide and run. And so Lucian tells him, you might have to actually bleed to pull off this coup. But, it's one thing that's really cool I haven't brought up is the weapons. So the werewolves, they now have bullets with UV lights in them. You shoot a vampire and they just sunlight goes into them and they die. It's cool and it's awesome. And we've never seen nothing like that in any other kind of vampire type thing. Because we never see the sunlight actually in this movie at all. So, but then the vampires came up with silver nitrate bullets. Basically, it's liquid silver in a bullet capsule, and when it shoots inside a werewolf, it busts and it goes through their bloodstream, killing them. Because they can just dig out the silver bullets, but this thing they can't because it's in their blood. So we get this huge battle, right, between the werewolves and the vampires, through the big climax and everything. By this time, Lucian is waiting for the blood sample of an elder vampire, but his werewolves don't come in time. When the war breaks out, this is when Craven shoots that of Lucian and stuff, and he shoots Michael. Lucian, still trying to hold on to the best of his ability, tells Celine to bite Michael. It will save him because he's a Corvinus bloodline. This is when Craven spills the beans, and then he later escapes, and Victor shows up to stop Celine. And then he basically tells her, I'm sorry, but I can't allow a hybrid of a werewolf and a vampire. It will upset the normal balance and stuff. And he must clean that up and destroy this abomination. And that's why he killed his own daughter, because she was pregnant with the werewolf vampire hybrid, and he was not gonna risk that. Once again, this gets slightly retconned, and I don't like the retcon of the third movie because it takes away from his evilness and stuff. I'll tell you more when it gets to that movie. So basically, now fully bitten by a vampire, Michael is transforming. And I was so curious, like, what is this dude gonna look like? Because these vampires are very human looking vampires. There's no veins, no like prosthetics on the face. They're just human, which are those are the most scary vampires and sexiest and stuff. But the werewolves look like these giant cat, doll, like, Sasquatch looking things. So what the world is he gonna look like? So we see his transformation. And basically he first starts turning into a werewolf, then he starts slimming down, and he has kind of like this black like body ooze looking effect where he looks like blackface because he is basically, and his whole body is painted black. But then he takes on his full transformation and he's basically a human looking vampire with these weird muscle and ab prosthetics on his like body and abs and chest. But he's not black, he's like a dark grayish blue. And he has like his typical long shaggy hair that's now black eyes, and his face is kind of human, kind of wolfish. Like, those type of werewolves that have kind of like those human looking faces where it's like very slim and almost CGI-ish looking. Like, it's hard to explain. But he looks like that. And he just looks awesome. And he's very strong, he's very powerful, and he's fighting like Victor. But he's still a hybrid, and this is all new to him. But it's basically, he doesn't appear to have like a mind, he's just all in rage. And him and Victor are just going at it. And Victor's an older man. So like, the choreography had to be suited so he can actually do stuff. And he's actually swinging his arms and punching. It looks believable. He looks like a strong old man. One thing I forgot to mention is how he got resurrected. How vampires get resurrected when they're down in those tombs, the elders, is that a vampire has to give them their blood. And so there's like all these tubes in their back, and it's pumping them full of blood. We get to see their body reconstitute, and it's really cool. It's something we never get to see. We also get to see the interior of when a human is bit by a werewolf and how their body and abs are crunching and contorting and stuff like that. This movie was visually awesome, man. But basically, Victor is whooping the behind of Michael, because Michael is still fully new to all this and he's not yet developed his full strength. So when she sees Victor is about to kill him, she takes Victor's sword and with one huge leap and swipe, she chops his head off. And it's like awesome and stuff. So after that, like pretty much the werewolves and the vampires all killed each other. There's only a small handful of them each. And the werewolves are looking over like, Celine and Michael's, as they're just standing around looking, and they just almost not really bow, but they just go away in the shadows. So at this point, there aren't that many werewolves left. There's only a small couple of dozen. And so we get another like monologue by a narration by that Celine, talking about how two vampire elders have now been slain. One she killed, and like there's a new hybrid and all this other crap. So we get this scene of back in the mansion. See, when Celine found out all this information, she interrogated a werewolf, and Victor later killed that werewolf in their little throne room. Well, when he bled that werewolf, the blood dripped down into Marcus. And then at the very end, we see Marcus' eyes open up, turn black, and he turns to some type of hybrid. So, and Marcus is already a vampire, and he's a direct descendant of Corvinus. So it was said that, Marcus, already has been infected by a bat, so that probably would be tainted. But they decided to change all these for the sequel. So yeah, I could not wait for the sequel to happen, because of like, we're gonna see what Marcus is gonna be like and what he's gonna look like, and he looks totally different than I could have ever imagined. This is when the movie started going more the horror route and stuff, and boy, it was awesome. So this movie was really breathtaking and really good. It was visually different and the storytelling was different. I love that aspect of the movie and how it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet thing. It could have been more on the Romeo and Juliet stuff. And it's not really. But what we get is pretty cool. It's basically a untold story that gets told in other sequels and prequels and stuff. However, a lot of crap changed in those prequels and those sequels that really affected the storytelling of the franchise. And, like I said before, like, there's a lot of stuff that happens and a lot of people who just never return. See, Lynn is the director and stuff, and apparently, it's been so many rumors. Nobody knows what exactly happened. But remember when I said Lynn later married that of Kate Beckinsale and stuff? Well, she was actually already in a relationship. There are rumors that she had an affair on the first movie set. And who was her guy she was with before? Michael Sheen, who plays Lucian. So, this is very awkward. You have Michael Sheen, you have Kate Beckinsale, and you have Lynn. And there's all these rumors. There's rumors saying that Lynn and Kate had an affair while she was still with Michael, and Michael and Kate have a child together, a daughter. But then there are other rumors saying that they was been broken up before the movie started, and that's when she started dating Lynn. Nobody knows what the deal is with that. But needless to say, Michael Sheen did not come back for the second movie. The film, no like cameos, no flashbacks, and they had to use a stunt actor to play his dead body. Needless to say, he did not want to come back. But Michael comes back for the third movie where he plays the hero, and that movie has a different director. And Celine, Kate Beckinsale, is nowhere to appear in that movie. Then when you get into the fourth and fifth, Michael once again does not appear because his character died in the first, and Kate is back in those two movies. And you couldn't even get like a flashback of like any werewolf stuff. So interesting. Then there's the character of Erica, played by Sophia Mayer. And I've already talked about this a long time ago, that she revealed on Twitter that the reason why, because she met Lynn a few years back and she asked me, yo, how come I haven't been in this movie franchise since the first movie? My character is literally still alive. And he said, and this is her words, he said that Kate Beckinsale, his then wife, did not want her to return. Yeah. So if this is true, this is why Erica never appeared back in the franchise. That's insane that Kate, because Kate was like with Lynn at that time. And like, so of course, if they're like together and he's the one producing and directing, then she got her way. This is not the only time that has happened. In the fourth movie, they decided to give Michael and that of Celine a child. For whatever reason, Scott Speedman did not return for the fourth or fifth movie, which made it very awkward and threw a monkey wrench in their plans. So they had to get a stunt actor to play his parts, and he's barely in the character of Michael Corvin is barely in the movie. And it's like, why? Why didn't he return? He will not say why he did not return. And nobody knows why, but I bet there was some drama. I bet you anything. Now, there's a funny commentary in the second movie where there's a love scene between Michael and Celine. And one of the people, because there's a couple of people commentating, and one of them said, so, Lynn, how does it feel directing your wife in a love scene with this other actor? And so they joked around about that. I bet you he probably was at some point jealous or something. So nobody knows what's up about that. But the daughter was in the fourth movie, but she was not in the fifth. And when somebody asked her why, she said, go ask Kate. Huh. Ain't that interesting? And as for Lynn and Kate, they are no longer married. Why? Nobody knows. So there was a lot of drama going on behind the scenes of this movie franchise. Now, wasn't that spooky? Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.